Alright, so this evening we are planting some lettuce.
That's really got us in the mode of thinking about our garden and food production this year. And one of the things that came up that we talked about and kind of reminiscing was food production and that expectation versus reality, and how we have kind of what we've learned after doing this for a couple years now. Right now is the shortest is one of those times where we'd have the fewest amount of animals on the farm, but we know what's staring us right in the face. Like it's time to start getting ready for the garden and things like that.
So I think when people think about farming or gardening, they think, oh, it'll be so easy. You know, we can just plant a garden. We can just grow, you know, as much food as possible, or we want to grow.
Throw some seeds in the ground
yeah.
and watch it grow. I'm gonna get some more soil.
Okay, and really, at least what we found is that is not as easy as thinking it is. You know, there's things that you have to contend with: bad soil, or rocks, or clay, insects, plagues of insects. Just time also not necessarily being available to do as much as you want. Maybe you thought you had one kind of seed and you didn't. You had something completely different, which has happened to us. And so, not to put a negative spin on it, but there is a whole lot that you have to contend with besides just your will to do it. A will to do it is half the battle, but
Great start.
yeah, or I'd say probably like 25%, and then nature is 75% of getting it done. And we found that what we have planned out, the amount that we wanted to grow and the ways that we were going to grow things had to change over the years.
We had tried gardening multiple different ways. One year we tried gardening at a distance
On somebody else's
property, and we had tried the raised rows type method and had very, very minimal, if any, success at all.
I forgot we even did that.
Yeah. And
it was with little kids, and so it was really hard with him working all the time and me having, you know, little kids at home that couldn't really take care of themselves, to drive out to this place where we had a garden and try to work it towards any sort of sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think we literally harvested some tomatoes and maybe a few cucumbers and something else, and none of our beans lived. It was
nothing.
It was just really a demoralizing kind of experience for us. And that was kind of our first go, and then we figured out that we were going to do raised beds when we lived in the city, and we had some actually really good success with that early on. When I say success, you know, success is a little relative to what you're trying to do. You know, the idea, you know, we're talking about expectations versus reality. The reality of it is you really have to really know what you're doing and really go after it really hard and have a plan in place to go and say, I'm going to raise 70% of my produce that I'm going to consume, fresh produce in a year that I'm going to consume for a year. That's a big deal. That's a big commitment, and I would challenge, I know there's people that do it. We are not those people yet. And so I think that expectation for us was, hey, we're going to go put so much in cans and in the freezer that we're not going to ever have to buy vegetables. That just wasn't the case for us because
hornworms.
Yeah.
And hailstorms.
And we forgot to turn a water on, or we had something else going on that day and it got up to 98 degrees and we forgot to water in the morning, and by the time we got home everything was burned up.
Or we killed our seedlings, and I mean...
Yeah. So there's just that expectation doesn't always fit the reality. Now, that being said, some people have very early success gardening and they go on it. But also, the other thing that we can talk about is the kind of an example of expectation versus reality. The first year we did meat chickens, I think we started with 25 birds and we ended up butchering close to 20. in the first year, and we were like, we'll never do chickens again because it was, it was not a good experience for us. That learning curve was huge for us. Our first batch, we kind of got a recipe down, and our second batch really went really well last year. So, but that first year we thought we'll just raise all of our own chickens, and we raised 22 birds, and then realized
they were tiny.
Yeah, realized that when you're raising a 2.5 pound bird or a 2 pound bird, that doesn't go very far, and so we had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, wow, we've got to raise 300 chickens if they're going to be this size,
or we need to find a way to do it better.
So last year, our total chicken production, we put 56 birds in our freezer last year, thinking, okay, this will get us very close to as many birds as we probably will need. And that was in July. It is now March 3rd or 4th.
We have 1 chicken in our freezer left.
So we undershot our food. Now that's so from July to now, we haven't bought a whole lot of chicken, if any at all. Right?
No, none, yeah.
So that to us was a success because we were like, okay, we got some things figured out, and now we know what we need to do to produce for our family. So we might also be able to produce for other families if they're interested. And that's always been something that has interested us, is being able to produce food, not just for us, but food to share with other people. But the idea of slow food that's locally raised, we've always fell in love with that.
So what we've come to find out is that we really love raising animals for meat. We love having a garden, and so you kind of have to pick your battles. You pick what you would use the most or enjoy the most, and so that's what we're trying to do.
So this year, I think that is one of the things that we've come to the reality that we're living in is it's a stepping stone. Every season is different, and you kind of take what you learned last year. One of the things that I didn't start doing until last year was journaling. It's not like I sit down and write out my feelings like, oh, Jesse told me this today and I laughed. It's this happened on this date, or I did this at this time, and then I normally put down a thought of, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I should have done this sooner, or I'm ahead here. I could have done this 5 days, later.
And so looking back now, as we're starting into the new season, it's really nice to have those thoughts and those ideas laid out where we can look back and see specifically what we need to do better this time, instead of just trying to remember it.
Yeah, and what we were doing at this point last year. At this point last year, we were just putting this together. I hadn't finished the greenhouse that we're standing in now. This year, I think with the way spring appears to be coming early, we'll get a lot more utilization out of it. So I think the main takeaways and kind of what we wanted to convey here was that your expectation, define that, and then know your limitations. I think that's one of the things we've had to learn is like, you're not going to go and in your first year raise 100% of your food, but don't let that discourage you. You're doing something. You're starting something.
Any information that you can learn along the way, that first year, that first season, will only help you. Even like we've said before, like I've said before, I learn a lot from our failures, and so any failures you have doesn't mean that you're a bad farmer or a bad gardener or a bad harvester, whatever it is. It means that you are learning something that you can take and utilize next year and make it even better.
That's the other I guess expectation is I'm going to raise all my own food and it's going to be so much cheaper. And I can tell you this, if you're going, I don't know the prices at the grocery store because I don't do the grocery shopping, but I can tell you this, I can feed our family for a little bit cheaper going to the grocery store. It's not a lot cheaper.
So far.
It's a little bit cheaper than going to the grocery store. Or feeding my family from the grocery store is a little bit cheaper than raising a lot of our own produce from what I've seen. But
there's a trade-off because we know what our animals are eating. We know how they're being taken care of and how they're being processed, and we get enjoyment out of them, and we get enjoyment out of our garden.
And we enjoy work, and we enjoy that toil of going and doing, raising our food and that connection we have with our food. And I think that is very helpful at times to go and see. And I think the other thing is when you get down to the brass tacks of everything, is your cost, the fulfillment that you get out of that little extra is much more than just the instant gratification of going and buying your food from the grocery store. And you know what went into it?
And it tastes better.
It tastes better. That is 100% something we can agree on. Oh yeah? No man's land, huh? So, all that being said, what we just talked about with expectation versus reality on the food thing is, if somebody had told us that in the beginning, or we had heard that information, that might have helped us come along. So kind of some tips or some ideas is journal what you do in your first year. Watch what you do, kind of keep track of it. Just jot your thoughts down on what you did and what you did and what you thought about it and how you felt about it. And then the next year, you kind of know, hey, I didn't like that. That didn't work out. And then keep your records through that journal is what we've kind of done. And it's helped quite a bit. So that's kind of our tip to that. And then know that no matter what, your failures, if all you ever do is watch YouTube videos and read books, you're never going to do anything. So
Get out there and get your
put
hands
some
dirty.
actual practical application out there, and that'll help you out. And you'll learn a lot quicker, and you'll start to grow more, because that's what we're planning on doing this year. We will most definitely produce more food this year off the farm than we did last year, and we're pretty confident in saying that early on.
Thanks for coming along with us, guys.
We'll see you next time.